Have you ever stopped to think that sometimes the ones who talk the most about God are the ones who lie the boldest? That not every prayer comes from people of good faith, and that some betrayals are born right at the altar? This story is living proof of that, because it's not just about adultery. It's about hypocrisy, theft, revenge, and a comeback no one saw coming. A scandal that started with Hail Marys and ended in headlines, hidden evidence, and a twist worthy of a movie. And if you think betrayal only happens between the sheets, wait until you see what they did with the 80 grand donated by the community. Matthew and Claire were always the couple everyone looked up to in the neighborhood. Always present at Mass, active in parish events full of smiles and sweet words. But behind that perfect picture, there was something Matthew couldn't see. The betrayal began right there, between prayers and fake greetings. While he believed he was building a solid life with someone who had already chosen a different path, Claire didn't just pretend to love. She mastered the art of performing. Every Sunday, while Matthew listened to the sermon, her eyes were fixed on the new priest in town. The altar became the perfect cover for a forbidden connection. His trust was so deep it never even crossed his mind that the woman sleeping beside him was about to rob him of everything: love, faith, and the respect of the entire community. Matthew trusted the church like family. He believed faith brought people together. But blind faith is just an invitation to fall. He didn't notice that while he was praying for protection, his wife was paving the way for sin. And the worst part? It didn't even start with desire. It started with secrets. And constant secrets eventually become betrayal in progress. The most dangerous thing about this kind of relationship is the silence. Claire didn't have to say a word to hurt Matthew. She just had to operate in the shadows. The theft wasn't just about money. It was emotional. She was draining their marriage little by little, and he didn't even notice. When love becomes a distraction, the truth usually walks right through the front door, and we don't even see it. That's how many people fall, too busy keeping up appearances while their home is crumbling from the inside. Claire started making up meetings, extra church events, parish committee obligations. Matthew, faithful and naive, supported it all. What he didn't know was that she was using the church as an excuse to meet another man. The very man who was supposed to represent the voice of God on earth. And the cruelest part? She knew exactly where to step. She knew he would never suspect a thing. The betrayal was cold, calculated, and silent. When the person you love robs your peace in such a subtle way, it's like poison in drops. And Claire was poisoning everything. The marriage, the trust, and soon, something even worse. Something that involved money, faith, and revenge. His name was Thomas, young, articulate, with that look that blends holiness and seduction. He had been transferred from a large parish to this small town, where everything spreads fast, including secrets. A few Sundays at the altar were all it took for women to start whispering, but Claire went beyond whispers. She got close, disguised as a volunteer, and stepped right into the forbidden zone of temptation. Father Thomas had charisma to spare. He knew what to say, how to look, and when to gently touch someone's arm to leave an impression. He wasn't just religious, he was a strategist. He used the confessional as a stage, and faith as a tool. Claire, bored with her marriage and seduced by the mystery, fell like a stone off a cliff, and with every amen exchanged, a new secret code was born between them. While Matthew thought she was becoming more devout, Claire was getting pulled into a dangerous game. The priest knew exactly how to guide the conversation, how to make himself indispensable, how to manipulate with kind words. And anyone who's ever been emotionally starved knows how powerful that can be. When the soul is fragile, even crumbs feel like a feast. And Claire was starving for something she couldn't even name. Their first meeting outside church was disguised as a pastoral meeting. Claire came home with her heart racing, another man's scent on her clothes, and a smile she hadn't worn in years. What was supposed to be a simple chat became a habit, and that habit became an addiction. The betrayal in this case was just the consequence. The real poison was seduction disguised as spiritual guidance. It's important to understand what kind of theft this was. It wasn't just an affair, it was an emotional invasion, orchestrated by someone who used faith as a shield. Thomas knew he was breaking vows, destroying families and pulling people into a moral pit. But that didn't stop him. And Claire, high on adrenaline, started lying effortlessly to everyone, even to herself. Matthew still believed his wife was growing spiritually. He felt proud watching her so involved in church, not knowing the involvement was something else entirely. And that's where the danger lies. When true love believes everything is fine, while the other is drowning in a sea of lies. What Matthew didn't know was that this priest would end up stealing much more than just his wife. It didn't take long for Matthew to sense something was off. Claire started dressing up more for church, buying new clothes, wearing new perfume, always coming up with reasons to leave the house alone. When he asked, she said it was for God, that she was devoting herself more to faith. But when you look into someone's eyes and the truth's no longer there, you just know something's wrong. Then came the late-night phone calls, always quick, whispered, with that tone of someone hiding something. Claire would say it was parish matters, that the priest needed urgent help with events. Matthew wanted to believe her. He really did, because admitting betrayal hurts, but suspecting without proof hurts even more. And when a lie is well told, doubt weakens even the strongest hearts. The cruelest part was how cold it all was. Claire went to the altar, took communion, smiled, prayed beside her husband, all while having an affair with the man leading the mass. It was like nothing was sacred anymore. The betrayal wasn't just marital. It was spiritual. A triple betrayal. Love, faith, and morality. And that hits anyone right in the soul. Little by little, the marriage became a performance. Claire said all the right things, made all the right moves, but her heart wasn't in it anymore. And Matthew, though he sensed something, didn't know where to look for answers. After all, how do you suspect someone who's always at church? That's the perfect trap. When betrayal hides behind prayer, it's nearly impossible to catch. This is where the first real theft in the story begins, the theft of peace. Claire took from Matthew the emotional safety, the comfort of lying next to someone you trust. It's one of the worst forms of violence, because when trust is shattered, everything collapses. Self-esteem, happiness, even your sense of reality. And the worst part? The person who cheats rarely understands how deep the wound goes. And even after all that, Matthew still tried to hold the marriage together. He tried to win back what had already been taken from him without warning. But it was too late. Claire was too far gone, more distant, more daring. And what he didn't know was that this betrayal was about to escalate into something far worse. Something that wouldn't just leave emotional scars, but also financial wreckage. The bomb dropped on an ordinary morning. The parish was buzzing with preparations for a charity event when someone noticed the church safe had been emptied. Over $80,000 gone without a trace. Money that was meant to feed families, renovate the orphanage, and fund care for the elderly. The community was in shock, and the priest's silence only made it worse. Matthew heard the news like a punch to the gut. At first, he thought it was a bookkeeping error, but something inside him screamed this was bigger, personal, and he wasn't wrong. The theft wasn't the work of some outsider. It was done by someone close to the cross. The same man who laid hands on the Bible every Sunday used those same hands to funnel money out during the week. Claire tried to fake surprise, too. She cried in front of parishioners, acted outraged in prayer groups. But one look into her eyes was enough to see it was all an act. The stolen money wasn't funding charity. It was paying for secret dinners, motel stays out of town, expensive gifts, even a spiritual retreat that never happened. This kind of betrayal goes beyond marriage. It's an attack on the entire community. Hundreds of people trusted that money, that system, that faith. Seeing it all destroyed over an affair and greed felt like losing a part of the town's soul. The theft wasn't just from a safe. It was from the hope of an entire congregation. And when you mess with people's hope, get ready for the fallout. What made it worse was how calculated everything was. This wasn't impulse. It was a setup. Fake spiritual meetings, phony reasons for cash withdrawals and transfers, even forged internal documents. Claire and the priest weren't just sneaking around with kisses. They were conspiring against everyone, plotting in the shadows while taking full advantage of everyone's trust. Matthew, who had still been trying to save what was left of the marriage, started connecting the dots. And the more he watched, the clearer it became. He wasn't just dealing with an unfaithful wife. He was dealing with accomplices in a crime. And right there, something else was born inside him. Something colder, a craving for justice. Or maybe a quiet thirst for revenge. It all started with an envelope. No sender, no note. Just quietly left on Matthew's doorstep. Inside, evidence. Photos of Claire with the priest in compromising situations, recordings of intimate conversations, bank statements confirming suspicious transactions. It was as if someone wanted the truth to come out without getting their hands dirty. And that truth was much worse than he imagined. Matthew opened that envelope like someone opening a casket. There it was. The confirmation of everything his instincts had been screaming for weeks. The betrayal, the theft, the manipulation, all documented, all cold and calculated. Claire was no longer just an unfaithful wife. She was now an active accomplice in a scheme involving stolen sacred funds, systematic lies, and emotional collapse of dozens of families. This was more than betrayal. This was criminal. But he didn't scream. He didn't cry. He didn't confront. Matthew did something most people don't have the nerve to do. He went silent. And in that silence, a blueprint for revenge was born. Instead of reacting impulsively, he decided to observe, to study, to track behaviors, monitor conversations. The pain of betrayal became fuel, and the desire for justice grew like a shadow, visible only to him. While Claire kept playing the saint, Matthew was transforming. He started acting like a private investigator in his own home, and each new discovery pushed him further from anything he ever felt for her. Because there's a kind of theft that can't be undone, the theft of admiration. When you lose respect for someone, no love can survive, and he had already lost everything. It's strange how someone's downfall can begin with something so small, a forgotten detail, an unsent audio, a misplaced receipt. That's exactly where he started piecing everything together. Matthew knew time was on the side of the patient. And now, every prayer he made wasn't for peace. It was for strategy, because betrayal might knock you down, but calculated revenge lifts you with power. The anonymous envelope was just the first breeze before a storm. And at that moment, Matthew understood that exposing them wasn't enough. He had to make it all fall apart, just like they did to him. Slowly, without warning, as if returning each strike with surgical precision, in the exact silence in which it was delivered. Matthew didn't want to just expose them. He wanted it to hurt, publicly, permanently. His betrayal hadn't happened in the shadows. It happened in front of everyone, in church pews, with a cross on the chest and hypocrisy in the smile. That's why he created a meticulous plan. He installed hidden cameras throughout the church, near the confessional, the office, anywhere they might slip up. It was time to gather evidence. With the same quiet, he was betrayed. The footage was undeniable. Quick kisses, subtle touches, late-night meetings, even forged authorizations for transfers. Claire and the priest acted like they owned the place. They used the sacred space as both the base for their financial crimes and the stage for their betrayal. Matthew watched it all with quiet calculation, breathing deeply with each new file. There was no turning back now. It was only a matter of time. With everything he needed, Matthew created a fake social media profile. Through it, he began sending clips and screenshots to influential people in the community, church leaders, event sponsors, even local journalists. But he didn't dump it all at once. He was methodical. Each message left a trace, a question hanging in the air. Panic started spreading before anyone knew where it was coming from. With each new leak, their mask of holiness slipped further. The priest started avoiding appearances. Claire, once bubbly and outgoing, became a ghost. The community's gaze shifted. The scandal didn't have a name yet, but it already had a stench. And Matthew controlled it all like a conductor of a revenge symphony. He knew. Pain delivered in secret deserves exposure in the light of day. A plan like that takes cold blood. And cold blood is what forms when healing becomes a decision. Matthew realized he didn't need explanations anymore, or apologies. He needed justice. And in this case, justice meant tearing down the fake moral pedestal they stood on, proving the crime wasn't committed by strangers, but by those the community trusted blindly. What Matthew didn't know was that his quiet revenge was about to grow far beyond what he had planned. Because sometimes, when the truth starts to leak, there's no stopping the avalanche. It spread like wildfire. The footage first circulated in church groups, then on local expose pages, and within a week, it was on news sites and even morning talk shows. The case was dubbed the stolen faith scandal. The betrayal became headlines. The theft, a national outrage. And Claire and the priest's silence only added fuel to the fire. The church immediately suspended the priest. Authorities opened an official investigation into the missing $80,000. People who once knelt to pray started wondering if any of their donations had ever actually helped anyone. Trust was shattered. And trust betrayed, in God's name, is not easily forgiven. The town, which once praised them, now turned on them with fury. Claire went from respected to rejected. She was fired from her job, cut out of social groups, ignored in grocery store aisles. And the cruelest part, she was abandoned by her lover, the now ex-priest Thomas, who vanished from town in the middle of the scandal. The woman who once thought she was in control now cried alone in a rented apartment, with no money, no status, and no one left to hold her hand. Matthew, on the other hand, was at peace, not because he got revenge, but because he finally closed the cycle. He never raised his voice. He let the evidence speak, let the truth do its job. And what's more, the deeper people dove into the details, the more they admired his composure. His strength became a model for many, and that only made the betrayal sting even more for those who'd wronged him. The betrayal had been brutal, but the consequences were far worse. Claire didn't just lose her husband. She lost her dignity, her foundation, her chance at redemption. Because some mistakes don't get fixed with, "I'm sorry," especially when they involve betrayal, theft, and cowardice. And what she never saw coming was that the wrath that destroyed everything didn't come from heaven. It came from the very man she thought was too weak to fight back. But there was still one last piece to this story, because while Claire sank into ruin, Matthew was building something new, something no one expected. And like every good twist, he wasn't just after justice. He wanted to leave a legacy. Months later, Matthew reappeared, different, calmer, more grounded, with a new light in his eyes. He didn't hide. On the contrary, he moved to a new city, started fresh, and founded a support group for betrayed men, not as a campaign against women, but as a space for healing, a place to turn pain into strength, revenge into growth, betrayal into purpose. There, he spoke from experience. It wasn't theory, it was scar tissue. He shared his story without bitterness, but with the clarity of someone who'd walked through hell empty-handed. He explained that the biggest thing stolen from him wasn't the church's money or the woman he once loved. It was his faith in people, and regaining that took more courage than he ever imagined. Claire tried reaching out. She sent messages, wrote letters, even showed up to one of the meetings. But he didn't respond. He didn't yell or shame her. He just turned away. Because forgiveness is a choice, and forgetting isn't always possible. Some betrayals cut so deep, not even time dares to erase them. And for him, that story was never about reconciliation. It was about rebuilding. Matthew realized that the best response isn't screaming, it's evolving. Instead of drowning in resentment, he chose to become someone better. He started studying human behavior, giving talks, guiding other men who felt like their lives were over. And that didn't just save others. It saved himself. His revenge was elegant, silent, irreversible, and life paid him back in its own time. He found himself again, rebuilt, and thrived, earned respect, watched his story go viral as a symbol of resilience and emotional intelligence. Meanwhile, Claire disappeared from the radar. The woman who tried to live a forbidden love, fed by lies and funded by theft, ended up forgotten. And maybe that was the heaviest punishment of all. When asked if he would ever forgive Claire, Matthew didn't hesitate. Forgiveness is divine, but there are betrayals even heaven won't dare to absolve. And with that calm silence, he taught more than 1,000 sermons ever could. Because some stories don't need reconciliation. They need rebirth. After all this, tell me, what would you have done if you were in Matthew's shoes? Would you choose revenge, stay silent, or keep pretending nothing ever happened? How many times have you blindly trusted someone, only to be betrayed by the one who claimed to love or protect you? This story isn't just about infidelity. It's about waking up, about seeing through the smiles and finding the courage to act. So tell me, what's still stealing your peace while you pretend not to notice? If this story made you think, hit you deep, or gave you that feeling of, this happens more than people admit, then subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications. Here we talk about real life, with truth, no filter, and boldness. Because sometimes the pain you live through is exactly what sparks your transformation.